Hi, everybody. It's Politics as Usual. I'm Dick Vaughn, and I'm delighted. I guess it's that time of year. Here we go. It's time now. Today is Politics as Usual, and you can see I have a guest today who's going to be joining us. It's that time of year where people are going to start coming out, and they're going to be seeking public office. And I love to have people come in and give them a chance to meet everybody. So today my guest is Steven H. And Steve, it's great to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
And you want to be a state senator.
I do.
And that's one of the biggest, if it isn't the biggest, it's one of the largest senatorial districts in the Commonwealth.
I guess it's the second biggest.
Yeah, I think it's. Let me see if I can remember. Middlesex, Hampshire, Hamden. Am I right?
Worcester, Hamden, Hampshire, and Middlesex.
Yeah, Worcester, Hamden, Hampshire.
I had to practice
yeah,
that.
Okay. But it runs from the Connecticut border to the New Hampshire border.
It does, yes.
And
Charlton to out to Palmer, and then straight up to New Hampshire.
Yep. And it's what, 28 towns, is it?
28 towns.
28 towns. And that seat is currently held by Senator Goby, and prior to that it was the good Senator Brewer. And so that leads me to the first question. Why do you want to be a state senator?
Well, thank you for that. So it's great to be here. I'd like to be a state senator because I think that we have some issues in Massachusetts that aren't being taken care of. We have people struggling with paying their bills, and just yesterday the Democrats are talking about they can't roll out another tax increase. But we have taxes, we have fees, we have surcharges, we have tolls, on and on that we're taking from the people. And I think that I don't think we have we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem.
Well, you know, one of the interesting things you talk about, and I had the great joy in my life of spending the time at the Registry of Motor Vehicles. I'm going to share something with you that a lot of people don't know. It is a cash cow. The Registry of Motor Vehicles cranks more money, and that goes into the general fund. They don't even keep it. It goes right into the general fund. When you charge somebody $80 for a number plate, okay? Now I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Those plates are made by Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. They come into us blank. We get a blank plate, and all that's on there is Massachusetts Spirit of America. It goes to our state prison, and they have a press at the state prison. And what it does is got little numbers, and you lay the plate on it, and you pull the press down, and it pops the numbers up.
Right.
And then it runs down a little belt, and there's a red roller that runs over the top of them, and that's how they become red numbers.
Right.
Okay? Now that whole process, if you're lucky, costs us about $3.
Right.
The plates will last 25 to 30. We still have people with green plates, which is also a sin. The registry should have pulled those years ago.
Spent the $3 for that.
The old green plates should be outlawed.
Right.
And they should be, and make them turn into the new plates. Because the reason we have the new plates is because we have a front and back plate. Because they're reflected.
Right.
And the old green plates only needed a back plate. But that's another story for another day. I mean, that's just one example of what's going on. But anyway, they charge you $80 a year or $100 every 2 years for that number plate that cost us $2.50 or $3, and it will last 25 or 30 years. That's gouging. If a company did that, the state reps and the senators would be ranting and raving and all over the place.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
If ExxonMobil suddenly charged $4 a gallon of gas, they'd be going crazy.
Right.
Yet their own registry, even a license, we have a machine that takes your picture. It prints it in 2 minutes.
Right. Right.
And they charge $75.
Right.
It is a ripoff.
And that's
I'm just using it.
Yeah,
but that's a tiny example of the fees. Let me give you another one. I lived in Sturbridge, okay, for 8 or 9 years. We moved to Charlton. We have 2 vehicles, my wife's and mine. Each car went up, the same automobile, with the exact same insurance policy, because I moved to Charlton, went up $200 each car.
On the excise tax?
No, on the insurance.
Oh, on the insurance, okay.
Just the insurance.
Yeah.
So I called the insurance department of the Commonwealth, which, by the way, you want to save some money? Close it, because they're in bed with the industry. They don't care about us. Could care less. The lady starts giving me grief. Well, you moved to Charlton. You're the one who moved. I said, you're not listening to me. How can the same automobile with the same policy, because I moved 2 miles, costs $200 more. Well, Charlton's in a different zone. Then move it.
You're closer to Boston, I guess.
Move it.
Yeah.
No, I think it's Worcester.
Yeah. Worcester-
I think,
Worcester
I think
County,
we're
yeah.
offsetting what it would really cost in Worcester.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. That should be changed immediately.
Right.
Want another one? All our automobile laws were written many, many years ago, when automobiles had separate bumpers, separate fenders, etc. Now those fronts, you get a little ding on your front bumper. They can't fix it because it's plastic.
Right.
That whole thing comes off. It's $3,500 to put a new one on. Because the old guys used to do it by hand. They're all gone.
Right.
Well, the laws were written back then. So if you get in an accident and it's let's say it's a little scratch on another person's bumper, well, that's going to cost about $1,000 to fix. If it goes over $1,000, you get a surcharge for 6 years. That's
Exactly.
an outrage.
That, yeah.
An outrage. Because my point is, they should reevaluate it. So, for instance, if the damage is $1,000 to $2,500, then it's a 1-year surcharge. If it's $2,500 to $4,000, then it's a 2-year. If you total your car, then it's 5 years. I got it. But you don't punish somebody for 6 years for a ding on a dent on a bumper.
Right.
And in the old days, it would cost $50 to paint it out. But now, because you can't do that anymore, they replace the whole bumper, which makes the cost inflated. When I've talked to some of the reps about that, they look at me like, so I saw a thing the other day that last year there was 56 bills that were passed. You can't believe some of the bills that took time in the Massachusetts legislature, you know, whether a bill about how high you should fly a flag. We got problems. Overcharging at the registry, insurance. So when I call the insurance commission, they said, well, I said, well, I want to know the explanation. There's got to be an explanation as to why it cost me $200 in Charlton more per car than it did in Sturbridge. Well, zone. What do you mean zone? Move Charlton over to Sturbridge. They're the same town, same size, basically. They're next to each other. They border each other. And she says, well, Mr. Bond, you know, you really just don't get it. Well, that's the way I was treated by somebody in the insurance department who should have been fired.
Yeah.
Okay?
They were, and that's what they forget, is they work for us. We put them there, we elect those folks in there, and then they are appointed by the governor or whoever they're appointed by. They work for us, and they're forgetting that.
I'll tell you another one. State troopers on the Mass Turnpike have an E plate, because that's Troop E. Anybody who's a Turnpike police state trooper has an E plate. Well, you're driving along, and I'm sure you've seen it. All of a sudden, you two or three state police cars going home from work or going to work who have a straight number plate. That means they work in Sturbridge, they work in Westfield, they're in East Brookfield, they're in one of the barracks, and they're going home. 80 miles an hour down the turnpike in a car that I paid for, which is abusing that vehicle.
Right.
When they don't have to do it. When the blue lights are on, no problem. I have no trouble with that.
Yeah.
But when they're just going home or going to work, not only the abuse the car's getting going 75, 80 miles an hour, then they tailgate, they come right up behind you, and if you don't get out of that lane, they drive you out of it.
Right.
Which is against the law. The registry rule book says you can't be too close to the car in front of you, except them. Okay? They drive you out of there, and then they keep going. Now, look at the amount of gas they're using because they're going that fast. Okay? When I asked the state trooper, why do you guys do it? You know what he said to me? Because we can.
Not surprised.
Now I said to a state rep, why don't you file a bill? Why don't you call the commissioner of the state police, get him in there, and tell him to cut it out? On top of all of that, look at the message they're sending to a driver when they go whistling down the turnpike.
Right, it's okay for them, you're right. But it's I think it's a whole mentality of Beacon Hill, of the Commonwealth, where they're better than us. I was shocked. I went into our RMV recently, and actually they're friendly. I was shocked.
Yeah.
So
they're much nicer than they used to be.
Yeah. It was awful before.
Yeah.
But they forget that they work for us. Back to the taxes and stuff. They're and fees and surcharge. All you're talking about.
Those are all taxes.
If they can't, they're all taxes.
Yeah.
Tolls are all taxes.
Yeah.
So when you really add up what the hard-working individual, how difficult it is to get up and go to work every day, it for some people it's probably not even worth it. Where they can collect more sitting at home, because when you add all that up in, and then you add in the new Registry of Motor Vehicles inspection that just started in, I believe it was in October.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to get an older car through the through the inspection. It's affecting our working poor. It's not fair, and I think we've got to tighten our belt. We've got to look at what we're spending on. Are there earmarks that we really don't need? Those kind of things, and get rid of them and look at, spend each and every dollar we're spending. Spend it carefully. It doesn't belong to the folks in Beacon Hill. It belongs to us.
Well, I always get a kick out of that. I used to argue with Governor Dukakis, and I used to drive him crazy. We'd end up with a surplus at the end of the year, and whatever it was, $8 million. I said, Governor, instead of running down to the legislature and finding ways to spend the $8 million, since we're the ones who put it there, why don't you send that money back to each one of us? How could you do that? Well, you certainly collected the taxes from me, right? So you know what percentage of the tax I paid. So if I paid 0.001.2% of the total tax income for the Commonwealth, then I should get 1.2% of that check back. $50, $100. We had a surplus.
It's a great idea, but that's not going to happen.
But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To your point, they grab that money and they'll name a library after somebody, or they'll do some foolish thing with it.
Yeah.
Okay? And yet, see, here's the biggest problem. Nobody has ever said, and you touched on it, and it's my great saying, nobody has ever said that a government knows how to run a government. In fact, states and the federal government have now proved beyond a reasonable doubt that I'm right. They do not know how to run a government.
They're not business
But here's the
people.
biggest problem.
Yeah.
And you just touched on that, sir, and let me tell you the problem. Do you know what the biggest business in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is? It happens to be the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yes.
We have more employees, we take in more money, we spend more money.
Right.
We have bigger pensions, bigger insurances, more days off, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
We have the biggest business in the Commonwealth. It needs to be run like a business. Now, the good news is we happen to have a governor who's doing a pretty good job at it, because he's a business guy.
That's why I supported the governor, because the governor was a businessman. He was a man from the healthcare industry.
That's right. And so the bottom line is, and the same in every town you cover, the biggest single business in Charlton happens to be the town of Charlton. We have more employees, we spend more money, we take in more money, we have bigger pensions than any other business in Charlton. It needs to be run like a business, and stop trying to run it like a government, because we've failed miserably at doing that.
The answer isn't always raise more revenue. That's not the ticket. The ticket is, you and I were talking earlier before we went on air about running businesses.
Yeah.
And the key in my industry, I'm in the healthcare industry, is when one's struggling, it's not about, you can't raise any more revenue. Much of it is government revenue. You have to look at what can you do to cut expenses without cutting customer
Necessary services.
Yeah, you can't cut customer services. That's not good for business. So you look at all the different expenses. Well, there's tons of stuff in the Commonwealth, in the towns, where I'm talking. Of course, I'm talking Commonwealth, where we've got to look at what can we cut. We have to take every dollar we're taking in and use that very wisely. It's not our money. It's the people's money.
But you see what happens, Steve, when people are in office, or they're working in an office, they don't treat it as theirs. See, if they treated it as a state trooper, this is my car.
Right.
He wouldn't do what he does with a cruiser.
Right.
If the girl working in the secretary's office of such and such, she wouldn't have 3 telephones on her desk. She'd only have 1. She wouldn't have, she wouldn't just call up W.B. Mason and order anything she wanted. She'd only have what she needed.
Exactly.
Okay?
If that were her business.
If that was hers. And the problem is, one of the things I found in my career was they don't look at it that way. They look at it as they're entitled.
Yes,
because
exactly.
they have a job at the state. And the other thing, too, is we have the richest pensions, which we need to take a look at. I mean, we have people, we just had a situation that was almost cryable. We had a commander of the Massachusetts State Police who just resigned over a little problem. And he walked out with $200 and some odd thousand a year for the rest of his life.
Right, right.
But on top of that, he cashed in 2.5 years of overtime and sick time and unused vacation time for another $300 grand.
Right.
What?
Right. And the people who are paying for that have none of that stuff.
That's right.
They have none of that stuff.
So all of those things, those benefits that they've accrued over the years need to be looked at.
Right.
Now, it's not simple, it's not easy, they're contracts, they're labor, but somewhere along the line, somebody's got to say, it's over.
Enough's enough, or
It's
let's get
over.
back to common sense.
That's right.
Let's
That's
get back
right.
to common sense. Look at the earmarks. Just last week, Beacon Hill and the folks on the Hill said that they're going to release the earmarks, or maybe it was the governor said he was going to release the earmarks, but no, it was the folks on Beacon Hill. Yet this week, yesterday, they say that they may not be done taxing us. They may have to increase taxes now to pay for those earmarks. There's earmarks. If you're not familiar with what earmarks are just
Freebies.
They're pet projects.
Freebies.
They're pet projects.
Giveaways.
So I often hear, as I'm out and I'm meeting a lot of people on the campaign trail, and I'm meeting a lot of people in different districts as well. Wherever I get a chance, I'm meeting people. And you hear sometimes, well, I like my congressman, or I like my senator because that person got me a swing set, or got us a swing set for the park, or what. I'm exaggerating a bit, but no, they're spending the people's money. We want to send people there who are going to run it sensibly, who are going to do what's best for the entire state of Massachusetts, and not get these giveaways that are simply getting them reelected.
You know, one of the things I noticed, and I look at this and I say, wow. Growing up, my father, who served in both World Wars, when he got home from the Second World War, he used to, for years and years, till he died, he used to say to me, son, whatever happened to common sense? And he says, you know, people don't even have enough brains to get in out of the rain. And we'd laugh, you know. And the more I think about it, the more I say, you know what? He's right. And I recently saw, my wife showed it to me. It was on, somebody put it on Facebook. It was an obituary for common sense. Right. And it was the basic same thing. Whatever. I mean, my father used to say, you know, you have to use the right tools. If you got a flat head screw, you can't take it out with a Phillips head screwdriver.
Right.
It won't work.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And so that was the common sense. People will try to do it and get bleedy knuckles and everything else trying to get the screw out, instead of going and get a screwdriver that's a flathead screwdriver and bring it right out. Right. And so to see that on your campaign literature, bringing common sense to Beacon Hill, you know, the thing is that I wish with all my heart and soul that you can do that, okay? Don't know that you'll be able to, because one of the things is you're one of what, 40?
One of 40, would be one of senators.
Yeah.
40 senators, yes.
And you got to convince the other 39.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
but the point still is, I'm delighted to see you say it, because it's so true.
Yes.
There's so many things, and I just touched on a few of them that drive me crazy. These are my pet. I mean, it still galls me that people in Charlton pay $200 more a car than people in Sturbridge.
I wasn't aware of that. That's something.
And all it takes, by the way, is somebody to go down there, file a piece of legislation to move Charlton to Zone 1. That's what it takes.
Right.
Now, there's a problem. Most of the reps are either in the insurance business or they're lawyers. Go ahead and try to get...
I'm not a lawyer.
Go ahead and try to get them to do that, okay? But anyway,
exactly.
And then the same thing's true. It takes somebody to sit down and write a piece of legislation and dig out the old laws where it's broken down on these 6-year surcharges if you get in a minor accident.
Right.
It's ripping off the population, it's gouging, it's wrong, and it's unfair. And there's 100 more just like it.
I think people ask me, okay, what bills are you going to pass? What bills do you want to? What bills do you want to pass? What laws do you want to pass? I think we have enough laws. I think. Matter of fact, they say.
Some of the problem we have, most of those laws were all written and passed back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and they need to be looked at
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
the damage to your car law,
Yeah.
which dictates a 6-year
Right.
surcharge.
Yeah.
When it was a minor fender bender, if it goes over $1,000, it's 6 years. Well, $1,000 today is a scratch on a front bumper.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
You know, in the old days, you could replace the whole front bumper for $150.
Right.
You know?
Right. Take it off when you went on.
But in those days, new cars.
Right.
I remember my 1965 Mustang convertible that I bought for $2,500 right off the truck. All right, that's how much they charged. That same car today is $48,000.
Yeah. And going up.
Okay.
And going up, but
Yeah.
going up. Why? Because of government regulations.
Oh.
I bet you. I can't imagine what we're paying on our cars.
Well, you know,
And
a
I'm
lot of
talking
things.
of federal
people
regulations.
don't.
But
I started to work
yeah.
on my taxes today. One of the things I always do is I estimate my gas for the year. Because in the gas price, I think it's 20 cents you pay to the federal government taxes and 22 cents to the Commonwealth. So 40 cents of every gallon of gas that you buy is taxes.
Right. But
So
then you've got
I
your
claim
excise.
those.
Yeah. You've got your excise tax on your vehicles. You've got the tolls.
Well, you
got
got
the tax on the tires.
You got a sales
yeah.
tax when you bought it.
Yes, it's,
For
and
$5, $6,
on and
$7,
on and on.
$800.
On and on and on.
That's
so
right.
I think we've got to go back and look at, first of all, those regulations. What regulations do we have that don't make any sense?
That's right.
Every time one's passed, they don't take away the old one, so they're all contradicting
That's right.
each other. And got to look at what we're spending for dollars. I want to give you another example where I think we're spending money foolishly. Is I'm in healthcare. I'm a nursing home administrator. I'm a nursing home consultant. And what I've been hearing for years is, of course, our lowest paid employees are typically certified nurses' aides, and there's a shortage of nursing aides in the Commonwealth. I mean, a severe shortage. But we have people who don't want to work full-time employment because they're on the Mass Health Connector.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're on the Mass Health Connector, you can't earn over a certain amount of money. And so there are people who really can't afford to take that leap in order to get the insurance at their jobs. So they're telling us, and they've been telling me for years, that no, I can't pick up any more hours than this because I'll lose my government benefits.
That's right.
So our Medicaid rates, what we're paying for Medicaid in the Commonwealth, are huge. And I would argue that if we had some sort of bridge to employment, a bridge to allow those people to get insurances at their place of employment,
That's right.
and not lose their benefits or some sort of graduated
A bridge to get them there.
a bridge to get them there, we'd end up saving a ton of money.
Of course.
But plus, we would get rid of the shortages, whether the shortages are in healthcare or any other industry, where people earn more on welfare than they do working.
Well, you know, at one time I was on the board of directors at Mary Lane Hospital in Ware when I had the station up in Ware. And an interesting thing I found out. Back in those days, Blue Cross Blue Shield would not pay you if you went to your doctor. There was no, you had to pay that fee, $20, whatever he charged you. But if you went to the emergency room, they covered you from $1.
Right.
So I remember sitting with the vice president of Blue Cross and saying, you guys are crazy. You're forcing people into the emergency room where the price in the emergency room was $1,100 just to go in the door. By the time you get up with the intravenous and
Yeah, it's gone way up from there.
$1,000.
Yeah.
I said, and yet you won't pay $20 for him to go to Dr. Hallisey's office. And they looked at me like I was crazy.
No common sense.
Because I said, my point to you is, think about it. I said, you ought to pay them to go to the doctor, you know, and use the deductible against the emergency room instead of using the deductible against the doctor, where the first $50 they had to pay.
Right.
Put that on the emergency room so we'll keep them out of there and send them to the doctor when they got a cold.
Right.
And he's going to tell them to go home and take juice and aspirin and go to bed. You know, right. I said, stop. And they looked at me like, and even the insurance companies. The old days, everybody had a deductible on the car. So if you got a dent, you'd go to your auto body, Friendly Joe, the auto body man, and say, hey, by the way, I got a $100 deductible. Can you cover it? And he would figure out a way to big the bill up so that it would cover the deductible.
Right.
And so it came to $800. He really was going to only charge you $700, but you didn't have to tell the insurance company. Shh, don't say anything. Yeah. You know. And so, to your point, a lot of it is so simple, but nobody's looking at it.
You and I were talking earlier about going in fixing up businesses, and for example, I'm right now in a place that was a not-for-profit, was on the verge of closing a year ago, and I went in about 8 months ago, and now we turned our first profit in 10 years. And how do we do that? Again, we can't get any more revenue, but we just looked at each and every expense, and some of it was silly, where they were like, why are we still spending money on this? Why are we doing it that way? Those kind of things.
Yeah.
And you know that's going on in Beacon Hill. It's the same thing, where you just got to look at those things and chip away at it.
But Steve, the most difficult thing for people to do, and you're a change agent. I'm a change agent. That's how I made my living. And the most difficult thing for people to do is change.
Right.
I was on the road doing seminars, and I used to open up my seminar by saying, I'm going to scare the heck out of you folks today. I'm going to ask you to change. Now look, if you think change is easy, here's what I want you to do tonight. When you go home tonight, I want you to get in on the other side of the bed and see what happens. Everybody would look at me and laugh. I'd say, hey, let me give you the scenario.
Yeah.
Honey, what are you doing on my side of the bed? Well, gee, I thought this was our bed. It is, but this is my side of it. I said, because change is difficult.
Yes, it is.
Because we're creatures of habit.
Right.
And what's happened in the Commonwealth and in our government, we can't change that. We've always done it that way.
Yes, exactly.
Well, then do it a different way.
Yes, yeah, and I think we need more people in there to point these kind of things out, and more people who aren't simply just politicians, but people who understand how, like you and I, how to make change and how to be a change agent, and somebody who can point out those silly little things that are happening.
Well, what you see, what happens is you get folks who are in there for years and years and years and years, and they become a part of the system, and they become the problem because they're not going to change.
Right,
because it's easier not to do it, and so they just roll along, and well, we're a little tight. Let's just raise taxes.
Yeah.
Because that's their simple answer to everything.
Exactly. Instead of taking the hard.
Instead of saying,
hey,
wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. Instead of having 11 telephones in the office, maybe we can get away with 8. Instead of having 4 telephone lines into my office, what if we have 2? Okay, we got machines now that'll put people on hold. We got machines that'll tell them to call back later. If you think it's easy to get to somebody, try to call your credit card company and talk to anybody.
Right.
They got machines that'll tell us what you're calling for, Right. So there's no excuse, but yet you go down to the State House and there's phones on every desk in the place.
Right. I'm a healthcare nursing home consultant, certified case manager, and nursing home administrator, and you always hear about the cost of healthcare, and certainly nursing homes now, skilled nursing facilities are really where most of the rehab's taking place. You get triage in the hospital, and you come down to a nursing facility, and there's the cost, the expense. Of course, we're doing it for 1/5 the cost of the hospitals. But I would argue that it's the regulations, it's the silly regulations that need to be looked at, need to be changed, which will help bring down the cost to the Commonwealth.
Right.
And it's again, we need somebody in there who understands the systems and bring in, rather than have the politicians try to figure out the problems, you have the people in the know. My biggest secret has always been that whenever I go in someplace, I get to know the people on the floor. I get to know each and every one, the housekeepers, the dietary aides.
It's called managed by walking around.
Exactly.
It's
and
amazing.
You want to know what?
It's amazing what you can find out just walking around the building. You know who the workers are. You know who the fakers are. You know who the phonies are. It's all there for you.
The silly little secret is that's really the biggest, the smartest thing to do as a consultant is you go in there in some place. You get to know the people, to get them to trust you. They're going to tell you what's wrong with it, and then you fix it.
Then you fix it.
You have the power to fix it.
It's easy.
They don't.
That's right. It's amazing. Well, we're out of time, Steve. But folks, Stephen R. Hall, bringing common sense to Beacon Hill, and I hope you'll come back and see us as the campaign goes along, because you're going to learn more, and you're going to have more. You're going to find out more things that people are unhappy about. And we can chat again. I'd love to have you come back.
We have plenty more we can talk about.
Good. I'd love to have you do that. Steve, thanks a bunch for coming by.
Hey, thank you. No problem.
Hope to see you again soon. And there you have it, folks. That's another Politics as Usual here on TV Charlton.